Hello and welcome to myfinanceteacher.org. In this video I want to have a look at cryptos, starting with Bitcoin. Looking at the 2-month cycle on Bitcoin, at the moment Bitcoin is on day 52 of its cycle. So for that reason I think we are getting close to a nice buying opportunity on Bitcoin, but I think that buying opportunity hasn't really come up yet. Although there is a small chance that Bitcoin did finish its 2-month cycle a few days ago on the 27th of June, in that case this cycle would have lasted for 48 days. 48 is not that far from a 2 months usual duration, so it is a possibility. And actually the 14-day RSI at that time was below 50, it was at about 41.4. Lower than it reached during the previous 2-month cycle low, where it was actually even above 50. So there is a chance the 2-month cycle in Bitcoin finished on the 27th of June. If that is the case, we should probably see a trend upwards in Bitcoin towards 10,000 and very likely above that. But again, I don't think that this cycle has actually finished a few days ago. I think we are still on day 52 of the ongoing cycle, and over the next several days, maybe over the next couple of weeks, we will probably see a nice buying opportunity on Bitcoin. Looking at the chart itself, you can see that Bitcoin is moving within this either downward trending channel, or if you try really hard, you can kind of discern a declining wedge. A declining wedge is usually a bullish sign. So that kind of indicates that, well, maybe we are possibly within a few days of a Bitcoin cycle low. If over the next few days Bitcoin one last time retests the lower range of this bullish wedge, somewhere at about, let's say, $8,700, $8,800, that might be our 2-month cycle low, after which we probably are going to see Bitcoin trend higher. That is actually my most likely scenario. Additionally, looking at the Bollinger Bands are quite narrow, and although a few days ago Bitcoin did poke through the Bollinger Bands a couple of times, I think we are likely to see a few more pokes before a more convincing cycle low actually takes place. So in the medium term, the daily chart shows that a bullish wedge is probably going to be broken on the upside over the next, well, let's say 2 to 3 weeks. But in the very short term, there is still a good chance that Bitcoin slides down to the lower range of that bullish wedge and pokes a couple of times through the lower range of the Bollinger Bands. Next, let's have a look at a 4-hour chart of Bitcoin. A few days ago, actually, on the 27th of June, we did see this dip in Bitcoin where the 4-hour 14-period RSI actually dipped a little bit into oversold territory, and since then Bitcoin is bouncing a little bit within this rising wedge, which is usually a bearish sign. That also agrees with what the daily cycle shows, although at the moment Bitcoin is kind of bouncing up. Since this is usually a bearish formation, this rising wedge, there is a chance that Bitcoin breaks on the lower side from this formation. And looking at the parabolic SAR, it also says that Bitcoin is actually not that far from giving us a bearish signal. A drop below something like 9,100 on Bitcoin would be quite bearish for the next few days. Next, let's have a quick look at the hourly chart. Within that bearish rising wedge on the 4-hour chart, if you zoom in on the 1-hour chart, you see a symmetrical triangle, and it looks like at the moment Bitcoin wants to break out of this symmetrical triangle. If the breakout is successful, the height of this triangle is somewhere around $200, so Bitcoin can actually rise all the way up to $9,300 over the next couple of days if this breakout of this symmetrical triangle is successful. $9,300 is actually close enough to this upper range of the bearish wedge. So the same story with Bitcoin actually continues throughout the 1-day to 4-hour to 1-hour chart. On the very short term frame, maybe a rise to 9,300 followed by a decline and a drop from this bearish wedge. Moving on to the daily chart, that's declining into the lower range of this bullish wedge. followed by a break out of this bullish wedge, possibly over the next few weeks. So the charts tell me that an opportunity is probably coming relatively soon. Next, let's have a look at some sentiment charts. First, let's start with Bitcoin Optimism Index by Sentiment Trader. We see that over the last few weeks, Bitcoin sentiment has been declining, which is an indication that a buying opportunity might come up over the next few weeks. As you see from this chart, Bitcoin is usually a good buy when this optimism index is low, when people are very pessimistic about the asset, when the blood is flowing on the streets, when a lot of people have lost a lot of money and want to give up everything just to save whatever money left from the failing investment. That's when you want to pick up the asset, whatever the asset it is. And we see that Bitcoin optimism at the moment is just above 30. It's not very high, but it's not that low either. I think a good strategy here is to wait another few days, see if this optimism declines, giving us possibly a better buying opportunity. Next, let's have a look at premiums paid on Bitcoin by investors who invest into Bitcoin through Grayscale rather than buying Bitcoin itself. And this indicator is also somewhat of a sentiment indicator. When a lot of people are really excited about Bitcoins, they want to buy Bitcoin, they might not be able to do that directly, so they probably want to invest into things like GBTC, which you can buy in the general stock markets, and that's when the premiums are high. And on the other hand, when premiums are very low, there isn't much demand for Bitcoin. A lot of investors are pessimistic or don't care about this asset. That's when a good buying opportunity can actually arise. So a premium on Bitcoin anywhere below around 10% is already pretty good buy. And at the moment, the premium is only 9.3%. So in the intermediate term, maybe not over the next few days, but generally in the intermediate term, anywhere from now and into lower premiums is actually a good time to buy. Next, let's look at Crypto Fear and Greed Index, something similar to the Fear and Greed Index for the general market by CNN. Again, usually you want to invest when the markets are fearful, not when the markets are greedy. And at the moment, the Fear and Greed Index is at 44, it's above 40. And the markets have actually declined from greediness over the last few weeks to somewhat of a neutral level, maybe a little bit more of a fear. So we see investors are sliding into fear from greed in cryptocurrencies, in Bitcoin, but this slide probably hasn't finished yet. So again, this index is not that deep yet. You probably want to wait another few days to see if markets become more fearful. And another similar indicator by Alternative Me, again, we see that cryptocurrency investors are sliding into fear. They're at the moment at 42, and they were at 44 yesterday and about neutral over the last few weeks. But again, there is still a lot of space to slide into more fear, so probably a bit of waiting is a good idea at the moment. Next, let's move on to Ethereum. Somewhat of a similar situation, but instead of a bullish wedge, instead of a declining wedge, you see more of a downward trending channel, although the slope of this channel is pretty flat. And again, on the 27th of June, there was a nice dip below the Bollinger Bands and below the 50-day moving average. So there is a small chance that the Ethereum cycle did actually finish on the 27th of June, which would give us a 47-day long cycle on Ethereum, which is pretty likely as the average duration of these cycles over the last few years was around 51 days. And the 14-day RSI did dip pretty low into 42.6, but again, I think over the next day there will be a better entry opportunity on Ethereum. If that is the case, then the ongoing cycle is still on day 51, which means the cycle is already pretty old and a cycle drop, the end of the cycle, is possibly coming pretty soon. So keep your eyes open for that. And lastly, let's have a look at premiums on Ethereum. And here the premiums are actually all over the place, anywhere from like 20% all the way up to 800% and higher. So it's hard to say something about Ethereum, but whenever the premiums drop significantly, that's usually a good time to buy. And over the last couple of weeks, premiums have actually dropped all the way from above 700% to 356% at the moment. But this premium is still pretty high. So again, over the next few days, maybe the premiums drop as markets become a little bit more pessimistic. But I don't think we'll have to wait for that long for the opportunity to enter into cryptocurrencies. So I think we have to keep our eyes open and maybe prepare some cash for this possible upcoming investment. That's all for now. Let me know what you think in the comments. I wish you a very nice day and good luck in your trades.